This leads into the economic and educational aspects of sexism, where she talks about the patriarchal government working very efficiently, right, due to the economic hold it wields over its female subjects, right? So this is another component of how this power structure maintains its status quo. So in traditional patriarchies, until very recently in most countries, women were quite literally considered non-persons, right? Meaning that they did not have any legal standing, and they could neither own property nor earn a living, right? So again, this only changed very recently. If you want to look at it in the West, it wasn't until the 1970s that, or 80s, it might have been even later in the 80s, when a woman could open a credit card without having a male cosigner, when a woman could get a loan without having a male cosigner, right? So the idea is that these things are not as far back in our history as we would like to believe, right? And that's not to say that women didn't work, right? The idea was that women have always worked, right? Either in slavery or in the domestic sphere, doing the most strenuous and routine tasks, but that labor has never, ever been economically rewarded, or, to bring it up to the forefront, has not been equally rewarded, economically speaking. There are other relations to this, right? As, of course, we might think that, well, maybe women haven't had equal pay or the same type of job opportunities because they haven't had the accompanying educational experience, right, or expertise. And so we can look at how these two things are connected. Women, of course, have experienced great forced distance from areas of what we might consider the hard sciences, or what Millett calls high technology, so large-scale building construction, the development of computers, right, NASA missions and things like this, right? So that distance between women's work and those fields is great, right, in that those fields have been controlled, right, by the very people who already have political power, right? And then even when women have participated in those fields, right, so we can, perhaps you've seen some of the recent films on this subject, right, but even when they have participated in these, they never get any credit for their work, right? They're looked over historically and not even acknowledged. So a perfect example of this is in Hidden Figures, right, where we have actually the first computers were not machinery, right, in the sense that we think of computers today. I mean, there were mechanical components, right? There was hardware, but the actual software, right, where we think of most of the programming going into, the very first computer software was actually female, right? So these were women whose job it was to manipulate the data and to engage in feeding the hardware and, coordinating everything and analyzing the outputs, right? So the first computers were actually female, but again, we associate, right, computer programming, computer technology, primarily with the male dominance of other technology fields, right? And so other, perhaps reasons for why these sorts of male-dominated disciplines persist is that even though we do have more women entering into these fields, it could be argued that, again, as we're socialized as women, we're not as encouraged to pursue those types of disciplines, right? We might be encouraged to concentrate on what are considered the more inferior spheres of culture, right, through things like studying the humanities, right?